Hello, I'm theoliverpickard and welcome to rather overcast and cloudy Limousin, France. And that's not the only dark cloud in my day because I've got a punctured tyre. But, as the old YouTube saying goes, when life gives you lemons, make a YouTube video about how to make lemonade. And in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to take off your tyre and fit 2 CV tyres without using a machine. Because we don't need a machine to fit our 2 CV tyres, it's simply not necessary. And most people don't even know how to change a wheel, and today I'm going to show you how to change your own tyres so you can be as badass as me. So let's get started. Right, what tools do you need? You need possibly a block of wood, possibly some tyre levers, definitely a valve tool, and if you're fitting a new tyre, then you're going to need a new tyre, and if you're fitting an inner tube in an existing tyre, then obviously you're going to need a good quality inner tube, and obviously it has to be a car inner tube, and obviously it has to be the same size as the wheel you're fitting and the tyre you're fitting. Whip, nearly fell over then. You will need some frog juice. This is literally frog juice rennet, or fairy liquid or other dish soap will do. Now then, this valve extraction tool has been modified. You often get a spiked point on a valve extraction tool, and this one's been chopped off. The reason why it's been chopped off is because when you put the valve in a 2CV on a 2CV wheel, the point will scratch the wheel itself. Now, I'm actually going to take the opportunity while I change this tyre, because the best time to paint a wheel is when you don't have a tyre on it. I know on this channel I've made videos in the past where I've shown you how to paint wheels like in a cheatsy fashion with the tyre on, but it really is easiest when there's no tyre on the wheel. And because we're not using tools to put the tyre on the rim again, when we refit this tyre, we aren't going to ruin the edge. And the edge of this rim is looking a little bit tired, and it's looking a little bit rough. So we're going to clean it up. We're going to repaint her, and then we're going to fit the tyre back on the wheel. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use our valve extraction tool, use this end of the valve extraction tool, and we're going to place it. I'm going to pop my finger under the valve, and I'm going to put it on. You'll feel it click in, and then simply unscrew it. And eventually it'll pop out like that, and the tyre will deflate. Right, when you see these valves, this is a valve, and get it right in my fingers, the valve tool literally fits on like that. See that? It fits on almost like a screwdriver. There's 2 flats on there, and there's 2 teeth on there, and the valve fits in the centre, and it just fits on like that. Super simple. And now we've got a totally deflated tyre. The other tool that you're going to need, which I didn't mention before, was a pair of heavy boots. These are steel toe cap boots. I'm using them because I've got them. Doc Martens will do, but steel toe cap boots are better, really. So you put your frog soap in, and you should get a few bubbles, and you just work your way around and tease it, like tease the tyre away from the rim, and like I say, you get some bubbles and some splurching and stuff, but nothing much will happen. And then go and make yourself a brew. Go put the kettle on, make yourself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, or have a drink, and give it 5 minutes. What this will do is your dish soap will slowly work its way against the rim and the tyre. so that when we come back to it, we can use our boots and separate our tyre from our rim. Simple. So obviously, if you want to do this on soft ground, because if you're doing it on hard ground, when you get the tyre off the rim's going to hit the floor. If you're in a concrete garage or something like that, you can simply put a big piece of cardboard down, and that should be enough. And I'm going to start opposite the valve, so I'm going to start here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the inside of my boot heel. Right, and I'm going to place my boot heel on here. It's actually stand on my wheel, it makes it easier. I place my boot heel here, and I'm going to push round like this, and then I'm going to like that, all the way off. That came off easier than I thought. There we go. And now I can simply push down like that. How good's that? All the way around, and it's come off all the way around. There's actually a machine for doing that, but it took us a little bit of dish soap and a couple of minutes. Now then, some of my dish soap's bled through to the other side, but I'm gonna run some dish soap round anyway. And you guessed it, now I'm going to go and drink my brew. Back in a minute. Okay, so a couple of minutes later, and I don't think I need to actually stand on it this time, and come on, get off. There we go. So our tyre is now dismounted and central on our wheel, which is critical to getting the blighter off. Because what we're going to do is we're going to go around and we're going to push the tyre into the centre of the wheel, and this will help us to get it off. Oh, it's all gross and soapy. Okay. Right. Now, we could just dismount this tyre off the front, pop a tube in, obviously cut the valve off, because it's currently got a tubeless valve in it. We'll do that in a minute. But we could just pop the front of the tyre off, pop the tube in, and then remount the tyre and pop it back on the car. But I'm a big believer, if you're a subscriber to this channel, if you've watched these videos before, I'm a big believer in doing stuff while you're in there. And the best time to paint a wheel is while the tyre's not on it. So we're actually going to take the tyre off it completely. That also allows us to take the tyre off from the back of the wheel, not the front. So it means that if we scratch it, we scratch in this ugly edge and we're not scratching our nice edge that people are going to see. It's a bit of a cheaty way of doing it, but this is the only part where you really need tyre levers. So I'm going to lay it down again. Piece of wood. I'm putting the piece of wood under the tyre, but not under the rim, and it just helps us because the tyre then doesn't want to fire back on. So I can actually take a tyre lever out and pull. I might be able to do this by hand. There we go. See how easy that is? I applied almost no force with my tyre levers, and because of my frog soap I managed to easily dismount my tyre from my rim. And then simply I'm going to do the same thing on this side. You will get very dirty knees doing this, but yeah, by putting the tyre in the bead of the tyre into the centre here, I've got a lot of soap to clean off. But by putting the back edge of the tyre into the centre, it gives you loads of room to do it. I'm actually just cleaning off some of the excess soap because too much lubricant is a thing and I can't actually grip it. The other good thing about using soap is that even though this can be a bit of a dirty job, because you're using soap, it's easy to get your hands clean afterwards. Come on, off you pop. I'm getting warm now. When I'm doing jobs like this, I never ever wear nice clothes because everything you have will get ruined. So I'm just using my levers to there we go. So I simply just popped a lever in and another lever in to give me enough room to get my hand in, and it pops off. And I have, though, if you look, I have scratched my rim slightly, so I'll make sure to paint that when I paint these wheels. Now, ideally, I would paint the entire wheel bronze, backwards, forwards, middle, the whole thing. But I'm using rattle cans to do this, and so that would take a lot of paint. So it would be better if I went to a proper paint supplier and sourced some and used a compressor and painted the entire wheel, really. But I don't actually have a good paint supplier near me, or at least I haven't found one yet. So until then, I'll just keep on going as I'm going. But I'll make sure to touch up any bits that I scratch with paint, and then that way they stay nice forever. And now I've got to clean all the frog soap off, but first I'm going to cut this valve off, which means I need a knife. Now to clean the excess soap off my hands before I handle a knife, because the last thing I want to do is be slipping and sliding around and cut myself. Now, where's my valve tool? Where have I put it? There. This is one of the problems with using tools on grass, and I should have a tool really to put everything in. But when you fit a valve, if you use a tubeless valve, if you see, this is a tubeless valve, they're like a rubber bung and they're bigger on the back than they are on the front. And the way that you put one of these in is you put it in from the back. This is the side of the valve extractor that we use to remove the centre, and then we screw this on. We put it through from the back, we screw this on, and then literally you put your two fingers around and you wiggle and you pull until it pops through. And once it pops through, it's airtight. That's how you fit one of those valves. Super simple. And then once you've fit your tyre on, you pop your valve centre, your valve core that we saw before, back in. And it's a really good idea to keep old valve cores in a little box, because every now and then you'll have one fail. So yeah, always make sure you keep old valve cores. I'm using just an Opinel knife to cut this valve core off, cut the valve off. This knife is flipping blunt. There we go. Literally just cut the rubber bung off the back, and you can pop it out like that. It's the easiest way to get them off, it really is. So you just cut the back off. Put this knife back, you just sharpen this afterwards. This isn't mine, by the way. If it was mine, it would be sharp. But it belongs to someone else who's operating the camera, who needs to learn to sharpen their knives more often. You're more likely to cut yourself with a blunt knife than you are a sharp one. Right, so I've got to clean all this goop off now, and then we'll give the wheel a nice sand. Now then, the reason why the best time to paint this wheel is now is because, can you see this edge here? Right, this line is almost a perfect line. The reason why it's almost a perfect line and not a perfect line is because normally there's a tyre on there. And even someone that's really good with masking tape can only get so tight to that line. Some people will deflate a tyre and actually pop it off the rim, like I showed you before, and then mask it up. That'll give you an almost as good finish. But the easiest way by far, because it requires no masking tape at all, is to paint it when it's like this. It really is the simplest way, and if you use a gun to paint it, even better. Because it's not, if this was a scrapyard wheel and it was all manky and rusty and horrible, I would use a really coarse paper. I would maybe use like an 80s, and then I'd use like a 120s grip afterwards. But because the wheel's actually in quite good condition, I'm going to, he says, falling over, I'm going to use just an 80s, and I'm just going to give it a nice key, just to get rid of any scratches or anything like that. Just get rid of the edges of the scratches, and then she'll be ready for painting. And then once she's painted, we'll mount our tyre back up. Like I said, really good sandpaper will remove far more, even with a lesser grit. It just does it without scratching the hell out of everything. And good sandpaper is always worth paying for. I used to cycle to a car body shop to buy sandpaper from them. They had like a paint supply place, and a professional paint supply place will always be the best place to buy sandpaper. And it was cheaper by about half price than the cheap rubbish stuff that they sell in the hardware store. It worked out at like 50 cents a sheet or something like that. Again, masking paper is the same, like really good masking paper. Go to a proper professional paint supply shop and get it from them. And they tend to be like small family-run businesses as well, so it's good to support a small business rather than a big corporation. Although, if any big corporations are watching and they'd like to sponsor these videos, 3M, I'd be more than happy to take your money. And if you've got any damage on the rim of your wheel, you can actually, like if the actual rim's slightly bent, you can very carefully go around and bend it back into shape. Obviously, if the wheel's like visually completely knackered, then you may need a new wheel. But if the edge is just bent or curved or whatever, like knock it back into shape. Just take your time and do it slowly. Well, my parents, in fact, I was going to say I've got a friend, but it's my parents. My parents once went to a shop to literally have this done. They had a puncture, and they were driving on their spare, and my dad was on winter tyres, Michelin M&S's, and he thought to himself, well, I'll just nip in this tyre shop and just get them to pop a tube in, and then that way on the way home we're not just, on 4 tyres. And the tyre shop actually put a 2CV wheel on the tyre mounting machine and completely curbed the hell out of the edge of the rim. And with a couple of hammers and a bit of patience and an adjustable spanner, we bent the rim back into shape the next day, and it's completely fine. So yeah, I'm just going to go around, check for any bits where they might be rusty. The back of the valve hole's a good one as well. And like I said, just take the shine off. And I think we're good. I'll just wipe the wheels down with some paint prep stuff, and I think we're ready to spray. Another thing I'll say is with 2CV wheels, or with any steels in fact, see this line here, if you come in close, see this line here that appears white? That's not very nice, and one of the only ways to get rid of that is to use, if you use a paintbrush, a dry paintbrush, before you paint your wheel, and you go around and you just get rid of all the dust out of that crack, it won't be white and horrible. It's just literally a place where dust sits, and because it fills with dust, it then won't fill with paint. So yeah, just get a paintbrush and quickly go around and get all the dust out of it before you paint it. And it makes a much nicer finish. Your wheels will look much nicer and stay nicer for longer. See, this is the easiest time because we don't have to worry about overspray. So we can get a nice thick coat around the entire wheel. And when we put the tyre back on, we won't be using tools. So this nice edge will stay a nice edge. Okay, that's it for now. And just build it up slowly over time. So I'll leave this for 20 minutes, half an hour. Ideally, you'd paint in a nice dust-free environment, but sort of living in a building site at the minute, so a dust-free environment doesn't exist. But I'm going to make these wheels satin anyway, so it doesn't matter. So yeah, need to leave it now, let it dry off a minute. Or 20. Welcome to day 2. Yesterday, after we painted the rim, as I was painting it, the heavens opened, and so there was no chance the paint was going to go hard. The temperature dropped. So here we are on day 2 in the morning. It's actually a bit too early, but we're going to get it on nevertheless because I've got stuff to do and places to drive. And anytime you paint a wheel, it's not good enough just for the paint to be touch dry. You have to let the paint harden anyway. So it's actually not a bad thing that we've waited till the morning. So this morning, what are we going to do? We're going to put the tyre on the wheel. And I need to clean up this bead because there's some dust and stuff. I'm going to make sure that there's nothing on the actual wheel itself. Going to make sure no gravel has fallen inside the tyre during the night. So I'm going to clean it all up. And then we're going to lubricate her up, and basically we're going to do the opposite of removal. So we're going to get half of the tyre, this back half, onto the front of the wheel first before we do anything. But like I say, I need to get some kitchen roll and just tidy this tyre up because it's covered in grass, and make sure there's nothing inside. We're going to make sure no muck goes inside the tyre because you can imagine if you get a little bit of grit inside the wheel, inside the tyre, if you're running a tube, that little bit of grit is going to kind of rub on the tube and eventually it'll rub a hole. So just gotta make sure always that it's nice and clean inside. Even if you're running tubeless, you don't want bits of gravel bouncing around inside your tyre. Okay, I think we're good. So, and choose which side. This side, because it's here. I'm going to get our frog juice. Now then, rather than push our tyre onto our wheel, we're actually going to push our wheel onto our tyre. Put a little bit of frog juice on our rim as well, because it can't hurt. So what we're actually going to do is literally jam it on. So I've I've got frog juice on my shorts. Luckily it's soap. This is the reason to use soap and no other lubricant, because it's kind of self-cleaning, and you never want to use any sort of oil or anything like that with rubber. So we want to get our tyre on an angle, we want to get our wheel on an angle, and literally jam it in. Right, now you'll notice that we're in that edge, and we can actually physically push it on by hand. It's crazy, but you can. Just put your knee on it and just press down. Simple as that, you're on. Now then, if you are a perfectionist or a cyclist, there is a tradition in cycling where you match your lettering up with your valve, and I would advise anybody with white letter tyres to do the same, because it looks cool. So I'm going to line Michelin up with my valve. Now then, normally if you were fitting a tubeless tyre, you'd have already put your valve in. You'd have taken the valve core out, popped it in from the back and pulled it through at this point, and then it would simply be a matter of popping this side on. But we're not doing that, we're using a tube. So I need my valve extractor tool. I'm going to do a similar sort of thing, but we're going to pop our tube in. Ants are falling down. So we're going to take our valve out of our inner tube. It's exactly the same as the tubeless valve, just happens to be in an inner tube. It's actually easier to fit tubeless tyres than it is to fit tubed tyres, because with tubed tyres you risk nipping the tube with the tyre if you're not careful. But there's a trick to it, so I'll show you that in a second. Come on, get out. There we go. Whoop, dropped it. Pop that in my pocket safe. Okay, so we're going to lift our tyre up and jam it in. Many inner tubes come talced, so that it's like white powder, talcum powder basically, so that they don't stick to the tyre. But in my experience, they tend to do that anyway. It's one of the reasons why tubeless tyres are better. And we literally just wrestle in, get the valve lined up. Pop our tube in, and we're going to pop our tube onto the rim, not onto the tyre, like that. So we've got, if you come close, you can see I've got the inner tube inside, the valve's there, but with this side isn't seated yet, right? And now what we're going to do to stop ourselves popping our inner tube, we're going to also make sure your valve's straight. That's super important. You don't want your valve on an angle because it'll cause the valve to rub over time. You see that on bicycles as well. It's very similar to fitting a bicycle tyre, to be honest. But you always see it on bicycles all the time. It's one of my pet peeves, where the inner tube is like that, the valve, and it's not good. So make sure your valve's straight, make sure your tube's straight. And now what we're going to do is we're going to pop our valve core back in, get it out of the pocket. I put it in my pocket because the last thing that you want to do is lose it. There we go, and my tool, because they are teeny tiny, and if you lose that in the grass or down a bankroll hole, remember which way it goes in? It goes in with the flats to the top. And I'm going to have to hold the valve away from the wheel to stop it scratching it. You can put a piece of masking tape on your wheel when you do this. It's the advisable thing to do. I don't know why I'm not doing it. Probably because of brevity and because masking tape's over there and I'm filming. But yeah, if you put a piece of masking tape on your wheel, it'll stop you scratching your brand new paint, or at least help prevent it. Okay, that's in there. I'm dropping stones and bits of grass from my knees. Right, now the way we're going to stop our inner tube getting nipped as we put the tyre on is we're going to put a little bit of air into it. Just enough to give the inner tube shape, but not so much that we can't get the tyre on. Because obviously if you overinflate the inner tube at this point, you'll end up with a tyre that you can't get on. But you can always let some air out, it's not the end of the world. So now I've put a decent amount of air in. I think it might actually be a bit much, but if you can get away with a bit more, it's better than a bit less, because the risk of nipping that tube is less. And now I'm going to get my rim, and I'm going to push this edge into that void again, opposite where the valve is, because it'll make it easier. And I'm going to get some frog juice and I'm going to pop it on. And hopefully this will go on in one go. If you're familiar with doing this job, you can probably change a tyre in 20 minutes or so, almost as fast as you can with a machine. And literally, see this? So I've just knelt on the tyre and on she goes. Working opposite from the valve. Like that. It's definitely a job for your knees, bizarrely. And now we've got her on that much, we can kind of bring this to the centre on this side. And that will allow us to get on here. You've just got to make sure it's not popping off the other side. And that tool that you mount the wheel up to and slide it round, this is what that's doing. I need to come further this way because it helps that 2CV tyres have nice flexible sidewalls. I'm sliding off because of the soap. Come on, boot. Time for it. See, your boot can't always do it. Sometimes your heel can. I'm sliding off. I've put too much frog juice on it. Trying to push that into that edge now, just like I did here. It's tempting at this point to use a tyre lever. But obviously I don't want to scratch my rim, so it's worth just taking a little bit of time to get it seated right, and then you can get it on without using a tyre lever. And as you can see, as I'm getting this back end seated into that groove, and so I'm able to push this side on just with my hands and knees, hands and knees. It's just a case of using a lot of lube, a kneecap and a bit of body weight. There we go. Haha, we're on. Okay, now obviously this isn't centered. This got caught up. So what we're going to have to do is bounce our wheel a bit. And that will help push it out, so will inflating the tyre. But I haven't nipped it on this side, and I haven't nipped it on this side, so when we inflate our inner tube, it's just going to go punk out. If you use a compressor, that happens very quickly. If you use a hand pump, it happens very slowly. The next tool I'm going to need though is a pressure check, a pressure gauge, because this has a gauge on it. But like I said yesterday, I've had it since I was 13, and I don't trust it as far as I can throw it. So I'm going to go get my air pressure gauge that I keep in my car, just so I can make sure it's at the correct pressure. 1.6 at the rear, 1.4 at the front. There we go. What's our pressure? You often have to slightly overinflate the tyre as to what you would have it on the car to fit it. I'm out of breath. But that is how you fit a 2CV tyre by hand. And remember, 2CV wheels don't need balancing. They don't need wheel weights on of any description. So now I don't need to take my wheel to a balancing shop to have it done. However, if you have any other sort of car, whether it's a 3 stud, a 4 stud, a 5 stud, it doesn't matter. If it's on any other car other than a 2CV, it still needs balancing. So you'll still have to take your wheel to a wheel balancing shop. Thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please let me know that you've liked it by leaving a like down below. There's a little thumbs up button right down there. Across from that is subscribe. 75% of all the people who watch my videos aren't subscribed, and if you want to see more videos like this twice a week for free and for nothing, please make sure you support this channel by clicking subscribe. I don't want your money, just your support. If you have any questions or comments or concerns or anything absolutely at all, please leave a comment down below. I read every single comment that you guys write, and I cherry pick the best ones and post them on YouTube. I post them on YouTube? No, I don't. I post them on Twitter. All my social media is down below in the description, so if you want to check out whose comment I post on Twitter, if you have Twitter, feel free to do so. But I'm the Oliver Pickard on absolutely everything, just to make it easy. Thank you all for watching. Please be awesome to each other, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.